I'm Woden's man. In this series, we go back to the original sources to ask the historical questions people stopped asking. If you ask the internet whether the Norse god Odin had any basis in human history, the answer is usually a quick, dismissive no. Modern culture tends to assume a figure exists in one of two isolated boxes, a historical human or a mythic god. This assumption relies on a specific theory, that the 13th century writer Snorri Sturluson fabricated a human backstory for Odin because he was a Christian rationalizing pagan myths. To understand the actual historical problem, we have to look past Snorri and the Viking Age. We have to go centuries earlier, to the foundational history of Christian England. Long before modern internet debates, Woden stood at the foundations of the English palace, serving as the political anchor for royal power. We have a 6th century precedent for this. The Gothic historian Jordanus wrote that after great victories, his people remembered their leaders as Anzisis, demigods. In early Germanic memory, myth and history overlapped. This overlap reaches a written checkpoint in the year 731. In Christian Northumbria, an English monk named Bede completed a defining history of his people's conversion. This manuscript shows how Bede recorded the ancestry of England's legendary founders, Hengist and Horsa. He traces their lineage explicitly: Victgils, Witta, Wecta, and finally, Woden. Bede doesn't stop the narrative to explain Woden as a myth, offering no apology for his inclusion. Instead, he asserts that the royal races of many different provinces trace their descent from this exact Woden stock. To an 8th century Christian monk, Woden was a necessary piece of dynastic memory, a name that survived the total conversion of England. This wasn't an isolated incident. The Historia Brittonum shows this pattern expanding, as the ruling houses of Mercia and East Anglia both converge on this same ancestral name. By the 9th century, the Christian court of King Alfred the Great relied on a lineage tracing straight through Woden to establish its political legitimacy. In the 10th century, a West Saxon nobleman named Ethelwerd took the record a step further. Writing his own chronicle, Ethelwerd describes Hengist and Horsa as the grandsons of Woden, king of the barbarians. He explains that it was only in later generations that pagans elevated this human king to an abominable dignity, worshipping him as a god. The concept of a human Woden was an established historical claim in the 10th century, existing hundreds of years before the later sagas of Scandinavia. By the 12th century, writers like William of Malmesbury were following a clear path. We are looking at a chain of custody, an unbroken inheritance of memory, rather than isolated guesses. This evidence has limits. It does not provide the exact birthday, race, or geographic homeland of a single man. But it does dismantle the claim that a human Woden was a late Christian invention, pulled out of thin air to replace a pagan deity. The record carries two ideas at once: Woden the god, and Woden the royal founder. Early medieval minds simply did not divide these concepts into the isolated categories we use today. Any name that survives the collapse of paganism to anchor Christian royal family trees for centuries deserves a serious historical investigation. You can find the source files for yourself at wodensman.com and see the full investigation in our upcoming book, The Quest for the Historical Odin.